Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Yes, very true. That's a very good point. And also just that really gets at the struggle that Clancy faces at the end, right? He wants to be, well, I don't remember the exact quote from his letter, but I want to be a symbol of absolute power as a symbol of hope or something like that. But yes, I mean, that's very true. And I guess to the core tragedy behind the story, that basically as the leader, as the hope of the Banditos, he is thrust into a position where he has this power within grasp. And then is expected to have strength to not take it for himself. And that's why we see this parallel to Frodo at the end of Lord of the Rings. Someone earlier in the stream was asking about if I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings. I very much am. In fact, I put out a video which kind of flew under the radar about all the ways Lord of the Rings it can be seen to potentially influence certain parts of the story, or how if we understand Lord of the Rings, we could understand parts of the story. But this is very much one of them, that, you know, we see the absolute power of the ring at the end that completely corrupts someone like Frodo, who really doesn't seek power at all. And he at the end is, you know, he wants the ring. He wants to possess that power. And here we see a similar thing. Clancy has already expressed that he's tempted by control and power, you know, in the past. And then we get him into a tower where this absolute power, I mean, he defeats Blurryface in a sense, and he becomes the next bishop because he can't withstand this temptation. Torchbearer, the leader of the Banditos, or more like an advisor, planner. I think Torchbearer is the leader, but there could be a way of looking at it in which the Torchbearer is Clancy's leader, and Clancy is the leader of the Banditos. And that maybe the Banditos, I was going to say the Banditos don't know who Torchbearer is, but that doesn't make any sense at all. So I think it makes a lot of sense, but the thing with the lore is, unless Tyler confirms it, I don't know how much he actually meant it and how much we're just reaching. I get what you're saying, that's fair. He definitely meant for us to take the story that's been laid out and run with it, and, you know, bring our own interpretations into it. So in that sense, he does mean it. But I know what you're saying in that, like, this wasn't necessarily what he was thinking when he was going through. I don't know if this has been asked, but why do you think Tyler keeps reusing the lore shirts throughout the Europe tour, only now with more inks and ink blots? Or Rorschach? I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know. Cool aesthetic, or maybe there is something that he's trying to tease. The concert shirts never really clicked for me. Like, I never found myself having any kind of solid ideas behind what was going on with those. So yeah, I'm inclined to agree that hard to believe he does it by accident. Yeah, I don't think it's by accident. Again, it's one of those things, like, is it intentionally something that's a cool lore aesthetic, like wearing the Clancy mask, that is related to the lore but doesn't necessarily tell us anything new? Or is it something where he's trying to tell us something new? I don't know. Can you please elaborate on that? I got nothing because I'm not as smart. I think he's talking about the backslide leaves in the contract and the connection to Jumpsuit. Levi, you can take it where you were going to take it. The connection I see is that in Jumpsuit, there's this pretty iconic moment at the end when he's throwing, or when I say he, it's the Torchbearer and the Banditos are throwing the yellow petals of a flower that grows in Trench down onto the seized and captured Clancy. And there's this iconic shot of him kind of kneeling there, or sitting there in the ground, or maybe he's standing. I don't know. He seems low though. And these petals are falling all around him. That shot, in a sense, or those petals are replicated again in the contract with the red petals and the leaves flying through the air in that. And then some people have also theorized that the backslide leaves that we see in that music video are metaphorically connected as well. I don't know if that actually answers your question. Did you see the really high quality top festival? The camera missed the overcompensate piano jump. I didn't see that. That is awkward. But if it's like a festival, it's a little more forgivable because presumably the cameramen are not dedicated to that particular act so much as the festival. But I don't know. Isn't trees in No Fun Intended? That, for some reason, I'm not actually sure on. And when I say for some reason, I used to think wholeheartedly it was, but some people seem to really question that and bring it into doubt. And the reality is, and I think many others, don't 100% know what was on No Fun Intended. I can never remember what's officially categorized as being on that original demo CD for No Fun Intended and what's kind of been lumped in there as early demos and early versions of 21 Pilot songs. I think there's a chance that Trees was, but the version of Trees that was on No Fun Intended has been lost to history. I believe also there's a podcast on SoundCloud, only 2 episodes of which remain publicly available, called the 21 Pilots Podcast. And in it, in the 2 episodes that remain, they feature Nick Thomas and Chris Solly, one episode for each. And they talk about the early days of 21 Pilots, the self-titled era, and I'm trying to remember, but they might have mentioned something about Trees being a song that Tyler Joseph wrote in high school before bringing it over to the band project. But don't quote me on that because I don't remember for sure. So in short, yes, it could have been on No Fun Intended, but some people throw doubt on that, so I'm not going to say yes, it 100% was part of that, if that makes sense. In Trees, Tyler asks God where he is and wants to find him, but at the end, God finds Tyler. Dragpath also connects to themes in Implicit Demand for Proof. Okay. Show me your face and blast me with the talk of seeing God's eye. Tyler wrote Trees when he was 17, according to him on the Vessel 10 livestream. Thank you. That does confirm it then. So yes, it could have well have been on No Fun Intended. Then the question becomes, is the version that we have on that collection really the version that was part of that original No Fun Intended EP? I'm inclined to say no, because it's identical to what we see on Regional Best, and I suspect they reworked it somewhat for that, but it could be very similar. Dragpath music video starts with the same sound as City Walls, so I think they were hinting that Dragpath is kind of lore related. Sure, that's very fair. Again, I'm inclined to think it definitely is lore adjacent, definitely has things that are worth considering or trying to understand it in order to better understand what's going on in the lore. I think that's very fair, a very fair way of looking at it. Does it mean it's another chapter of the lore or that everything that happens in that video is canonical to the lore? No, but again, I think it is almost like a cipher or almost the key to a cipher. Is that the right metaphor? The contract had the same effect, but not blurry when he swung out right. That's right. That's it. Although obviously there might be other instances throughout the video besides just that. Yeah, now that I think about it, there were a lot of effects like that that sort of spread him out and things like that. But the contract has an interesting place in the lore. Again, the reason why I didn't look at that and looked at videos like Heavy Dirty Soul and Jumpsuit is because of this connection it has to City Walls. We have only been following one Clancy. I think we've only been following one Clancy through the visual narrative. And that's why these flashbacks are important, because they are all this Clancy. They all link to what we've seen before in the story from this Clancy. And that's why he's wearing the exact same clothes he was in those previous moments of the visual narrative. There's another Clancy at play in the journal, and perhaps another Clancy at play sort of in a futuristic sense. That's the Dragpath Clancy. I don't know, but at the very least, I do think there are two Clancys. There's one in the music videos, and that's why we see a disconnect between the narrative of the music videos and the letters. When will we get more than we ever imagined on streaming or DVD? I don't know. Let me just check. I doubt they have. Yeah, no, there's nothing there, unless I spelled that wrong. But yeah, I don't think they've really mentioned a pre-order or anything like that. What was it? Mark hinted that we were going to get a release soon, and some people might have found indications of it coming to streaming or on-demand libraries soon. But yeah, I don't know when we're gonna get the Blu-ray. I really hope we do. Again, I think didn't it outperform expectations at the box office, right? Like, it did well, so you'd think it would be in their best interest, but